بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد في الأولين وفي الآخرين وفي الملأ الأعلى إلى يوم الدين. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless us on this Friday night. We ask Allah Jalla wa ala to accept from us this gathering, to make this a gathering that is full of light, full of guidance, full of upliftment, full of tranquility, full of angelic presence. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be pleased with us and to not be displeased with us. We ask Allah Jalla wa ala to uplift our collective condition and to alter our hearts and our minds and our bodies and our beings in a direction that is pleasing to Him, and to orient our minds and our bodies and our hearts towards Allah Jalla wa ala, and to make the Quran, this beautiful, beautiful gift and guidance, to be that which animates our hearts and our minds. Allahumma ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. In a little bit, inshallah. I'll let you know when. The topic for today's khutbah and tonight's halaqa is the topic of unlocking change. Really trying to think about what does change look like. And I know that this, as I noted in the khutbah, is a topic that constantly is on our minds, on our hearts. We're trying to understand what does it actually take to change the circumstances that we face. As a community, we are trying to figure out what it takes to change our own states, our own affairs on the familial level, on a social level. We're trying to see and realize change in the public sphere. We're very often discontent and unnerved and uneasy about what we see. So what is this idea of change? What happens? What must take place for us to realize change? And in the khutbah, I spent a lot of time trying to elucidate that for change to take place, real, substantial change, it must be rooted in an idea of Allah Jalla wa ala. That Allah being the creator of this world that we are constantly engaging and navigating, and He knowing truthfully and honestly and singularly what makes this world tick, if you will, then we have to turn to Him to illustrate for us and to guide us towards the modes, the methods, and the approaches to actuate change in our lives. Because subhanAllah, all of us, we find this innate need for change. I guarantee you none of us in this masjid right now are content with where we are. All of us feel some nagging impulse to change and to be better. But very often, we're not able to accomplish that. We're not able to achieve that goal. And so it's necessary for us to take time and reflect on this idea. And to do that, to reflect on this concept of change, I want us to watch a brief video. It's a video that's been circulating around the internet over the past couple of days. It's gone viral. I assume some of you, or maybe all of you, have seen it, about an imam that forgives someone who is accused, or someone who is a part of a group of people apparently who killed his son. And you'll see his testimony shortly in the court case, or in the court. But I want you, as you're watching the video, I want you to think about change, and I want you to think about change in two ways. Because in the khutbah I made it very clear that for change to happen, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exclaims that you must change yourself. That if you hope that Allah changes an affair of yours or your people or the circumstances that you're experiencing, you must change yourself. You must change your internal state. And to change the internal state, we have to do two things. Number one, we have to get our mind right, meaning we have to get our thoughts in order. We have to know what good ideas are, what good beliefs are, what morality looks like. We have to have that clear guidance that we process intellectually, but then spiritually, we have to beautify our hearts and we have to uplift our souls. And we have to engender the most beautiful of Quranic and prophetic values in our hearts. And we must upgrade our nufus. The nafs, the lower self, is comprised of an innate state, which is called an-nafsul ammara bisu, the nafs that inclines or that commands towards evil. But then the nafs, which is this lower self, can be elevated and can be developed, whereat it graduates to a very heighty station. So the nafs, naturally unrestricted, left alone, is constantly telling you evil. Fulfill your desire, covet what you desire, pursue your base desires. Don't tell yourself no. Whatever you want, take it. If it's not yours and you want it, take it. If you want that pleasure, don't let anything restrict you from having that pleasure. Go ahead, follow it, pursue it. That's an-nafsul ammara. Literally, it is commanding me towards evil. But then the nafs, as Allah tells us in the Quran, can be elevated. And you can elevate the nafs from the nafs that is ammara, that is inclining and commanding towards evil, through spiritual practice and spiritual exercise, through fulfilling the commands of Allah Jalla wa Ala, through praying, through fast, through recitation of the Quran, through dhikr. So engaging in these beautiful prophetic qualities and ibadat, the nafs can be elevated. And you can develop a nafs that is called nafsul lawama, a nafs that is remorseful, that feels regret, that does something wrong and then realizes, I shouldn't have done that. That does something that the base desire wants and then feels deeply regretful and returns to Allah. And that's an elevated nafs. That's moving beyond the unrestricted base nafs to then the slightly more elevated nafs that inclines towards regretfulness. But that nafs itself can be fashioned and developed and exercised and processed through the Quran and through the Sunnah and through fulfilling that prophetic way into being elevated to a nafsul. Who knows? Huh? A nafsul mutma'inna. From the nafsul lawama, you can elevate to the mutma'inna nafs, which is the tranquil nafs. And the nafs that has tuma'nina is the one that is tranquil, is at ease with circumstances around them. They're not so motivated in a way that they buckle under the pressure of bestial desire or subu'i and dogged desires or satanic impulses. That nafs is tranquil. It's able to navigate without being unnerved. The lawama is, it's in tumult. It's back and forth. خلطوا عملا صالحا وآخر سيئا. They've brought together good deeds and bad deeds, and then they turn to Allah making istighfar and asking Allah for forgiveness. And that's a good state to be in. But the nafsul mutma'inna is the one that's tranquil in a way that it's not so unnerved and motivated by those impulses. It can keep them at bay. So it maintains kind of a neutral, tranquil state. And that's an elevated self. But a further, even greater and more elevated state is an-nafsul radiyah, the self that is content and pleased. And you can see why that's an elevated state from just being a tranquil self, because a pleased and content self is the one that could be facing very dire circumstances, dealing with the loss of life, dealing with disease, dealing with loneliness, dealing with all sorts of problems and challenges. And not that it's just simply tranquil, but it's actually pleased and radi bi qada'illah. It is content with the decree of Allah. It finds pleasure and joy in being in loving surrender to Allah. It finds joy and pleasure in reading the Quran. It finds joy and pleasure in being in the remembrance of Allah. To sit down and to say Subhanallah, Walhamdulillah, wa la ilaha illallah, Wallahu Akbar. That nafs finds so much refreshing qualities and pleasing qualities about that. I was recently talking to a brother about who was telling me how, you know, when times get tight and difficult and something really difficult happens to him in his life, he finds himself retreating into a very dark place. You know, something hits him and he feels like this was a very painful moment. Maybe someone spoke to him in a particular way or treated him in a particular way and just completely knocks him out. And he can find himself just retreating to a very dark place, you know, going and you know, couching up somewhere, watching certain things that, you know, he may like to, indulging in certain vices that make him feel comfortable. And subhanAllah, every human being has that quote-unquote comfort space that they go to when things are getting tight. You know, if you're just not in the mood and you're sick and tired and you're bothered, very often there's a comfort zone that we go to. We may like to watch movies, we may like to, you know, eat a particular type of food, indulge in particular type of sinfulness. There are people who when things are going tough and they're a little stressed out, they want to drink something or smoke something, or maybe engage in some illicit acts, watch something, right? That, subhanAllah, becomes, for the shahwani nafs, a comfort zone. And that's something all of us have to be mindful. Who amongst us, like what's my comfort place? Where do I find my tranquility? Because the nafs that is radiyah, the nafs that is content and pleased, is a nafs that finds its tranquility ma'Allah. That when things are getting very stressful, you know, sometimes if you have a really big deadline and you're really worried about, for example, an interview you have or a job prospect or a marriage prospect, you can wake up in the middle of the night and your mind is literally frazzled. It's just pulsating and your eyes can begin to tremble and shake if you have a really stressful circumstance on you. What do you do in that moment to actually find rida, contentment, relief, tranquility? What practices do you do? And this is something to ask yourself. Do you find that you have to resort to simplistic human base pleasures like watching something or eating something or doing some sort of sinful act to just get your mind off of it? That's why a lot of people, they drink and they smoke because they just can't deal with it, so they need to get their mind off of it. And so what do? They numb their mind somehow, or just binge watch, you know, a Netflix series or an HBO series because I just want to like forget and I don't want to think. Does that resolve the problem? Does that actually heal the pain? Does that bring you any type of real, genuine change and relief? No. It just numbs it. It's taking any type of anesthetic, you put it on, once the anesthetic wears off, the pain is right there, the pathology is right there, the sickness is right there. And so, comprehending these nufus, these states of the nafs, enables you to recognize, hold on, there is actually a pathway to be liberated and elevated in a way where I am content with myself. Content with myself meaning not that I'm okay with my, base self, but meaning that I can actually sit down and think about meaningful thoughts and not need to distract myself by this or by Facebook or my social media or a YouTube clip because I'm just frazzled in my mind. There's a way to graduate the nafs to being radiyah, to being content and pleased. When you reflect on the stories of our righteous predecessors and how they would be facing the most challenging circumstances of their lives. Sayyidina Ayyub, riddled with illness, riddled with loss, riddled with every type of trauma a human being can experience. But what is he? He is radi. He's content and he's pleased. He's above his affairs. He's above them. They don't. His affairs don't control him. He's above his affairs. He is the one who navigates how his affairs will be meaningful to him. To the extent that when his wife is telling him, ask for relief, his nafs is one that's saying, I'm with Allah. You know? I'm with Allah. I don't need what Allah doesn't want for me. I need what Allah wants for me. It's okay to ask for healing. It's completely the way of the Prophet ﷺ to ask for healing. There's a dua for healing. You know, Allahumma rabban nas, idhib al-ba's, ishfi anta shafi, la shifa illa shifa'uk, shifa'an la yughadiru saqama. Oh Allah, you are the one who cures the pains, you know, cures the ailments, cure my ailment and do not remain any of the ailment behind. There's a dua for that. But I'm just trying to illustrate a nafs that is radiyah is one that is able to elevate above. And so as people who have these nufus, we have to realize that there is a process that has to be enacted in our lives to help these nufus graduate and to elevate. And so there's a simple process for that. There is engendering the meanings of the Quran and the meanings and the guidance and the practices that the Prophet ﷺ advised us to do every single day. You know, this brother who I was talking to, he was telling me, but Shaykh, like, it's easier said than done. You know, how can I just sit down, for example, if my mind is frazzled, how can I remember Allah and find relief? You know, I sometimes I'll sit there and say, okay, I'm going to do tafakkur. I'm going to do reflection, and I'll just sit there and I'll look out at a very beautiful horizon, maybe like a seafront or a mountaintop, and then I sit there and I try to do tafakkur, and my mind goes blank. I just kind of observe and I say, okay, it's beautiful, mashallah, let's on to the next activity. But is there a way to actually sit there in your person as you are and to be with Allah, and to not only be with Allah but to get lost in the beauty and the magnificence of Allah, where that your time spent with Allah just in thought and reflection is so remarkably pleasurable that it literally makes you detach from the circumstances of this dunya. Is that plausible? It's very possible. And by the way, it's not that philosophically complex. It just requires hard work. Imagine that you're a person who is bedridden and you were in a really bad accident, just like anyone who has had to go through physical therapy. What does the physical therapist do for you to just get you going? Let's say the goal is to get you running, for example. The starting point is going to be what? What can you move in your body? Maybe you can move your toe. You can move a finger. Okay, let's start with exercising the toe and push back and push forth. And then the next day, you move from one toe to maybe 5 toes. And then from 5 toes, you move the foot. And the foot begins to maybe push forward, but it can't go back. So you have to train it to start to do that. And then from the foot, you move to maybe the ankle. And from the ankle to the knee. And from the knee to the thigh. And then you strengthen those muscles, maybe in one leg. And then you move to the second leg. And then in time, through weeks and months of gradual, repetitive, simple motions, what happens? Your body's becoming stronger. Your legs are gaining strength. And so you go from not being able to move your toe or move your foot to now you're standing. And from standing, you're able to walk. And then, as we've seen multiple people do, then able to run. Why? Simple, methodical, repetitive motions through the direction of an expert who knows what he or she is doing in that space. Brothers and sisters, in the spiritual realm, it is precisely the same exact logic. We have to stop thinking about Allah in this very far-reaching, impossible ideal that spirituality is so far off and impossible. Wallahi, it's not. It is the equivalent of what I just illustrated of someone who's been in a terrible accident and is trying to gain the strength up of the muscles to walk. That if you start every single day with your 5 prayers, and then from your 5 prayers, after you get them in order, you begin to add some sunan, and then you introduce a diet in the morning of some morning dhikr, morning remembrance. You turn on YouTube and literally YouTube morning dhikr and just listen to that. Even if you don't say it with your own tongue, you just listen, morning dhikr. And then you listen for 15 minutes to evening dhikr. And then you introduce 100, for example, astaghfirullah, and 100 salawat. That's the equivalent of building out those muscles. Till you reach the point after a process that may last for months, if not a year plus, it doesn't matter. You go with the process, you'll find yourself, when you are unnerved or something haqiqatan really is bringing you anguish, you turn straight to Allah Jalla wa Ala. And all you have to do is say Allah, Allah, Allah. And Allah becomes so magnificently large in your heart and in your mind, in your space, that it just pushes everything out. It pushes out every negative impulse, every satanic impulse, every word that the media says or that your friend says or that your loved one who's hurting you says. Anything will just be pumped out. The pressure of being at school or at work or growing or getting the next promotion or passing the exam so you can finally have the career of your dreams, all of those chalked up ideas that oppress our minds will be smoothed out by just magnifying Allah. And that's what taqwa ultimately is. God consciousness, and when Allah becomes so large in your life, so magnificent in your heart and your soul, that every single thing beyond Allah is rendered simple to insignificant. And that's the goal. Is that a plausible goal? Is that a realizable goal? Yes, 100% categorically. It just requires work and know-how. فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Ask the people of knowledge if you don't know. Don't assume, brothers and sisters, and this is one of our greatest impediments. We assume that we've tried. So many people say, Shaykh, I have tried to be a good Muslim. I have tried to be close to Allah. I've tried for so many years. It just doesn't work for me. Is that reasonable? If someone who's going back to the bedridden person who's trying to go through physical therapy to strengthen their body, if they say, I've tried for 10 years to walk, and they ask, what did you try? He said, I was doing pull-ups with my arms, really just strengthening my upper body, but I still can't walk. I'll say, you're doing the wrong thing. You needed some guidance to ensure that you could move in the way that you needed to move. You needed someone, a physical therapist with know-how to help guide you. In the space of spirituality, you need know-how, you need guidance. You need to ask the people of knowledge who can show you, tell me the steps, give me the diet that I need to follow to get myself to a nafs that is radiyah, that is content. And then the step above that is a nafsul mardiyah. That is the one that not only is it pleased, but Allah is pleased with that nafs. And that's a beautiful station to be in. That when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He looks out at the scores of ibad, of servants that are out there in the world, and He sees your nafs, and it is beautiful. And Allah is content with that one. He says, that is my beautiful nafs that has lived in loving surrender to me, has given it time to cultivate that spirit through ibadah, through worship, through repetition, through dhikr, through istighfar and tawbah, learning about Allah's majestic names, internalizing all of Allah's names, growing through them. We talk about wanting to know of Allah. How many of us know Allah's names? How many of us spend time learning Allah's magnificent names and attributes? Just the other day I was reflecting on the name Al-Ghaffar with a few people. When you sit down and reflect upon the name Al-Ghaffar, the one who is oft forgiving, the one who loves to forgive, Allahu Jalla wa Ala is Al-Ghaffar, and you just sit there and think about, what does this name mean? How does it impact me? How can I connect with it? How can I realize this name? Subhanallah, Allah is someone who loves to forgive. I forget about that sometimes. Actually, I forget about that a lot of times. I've written myself off a long time ago. I've decided that I'm a failure and there is no hope. And so I don't even remember that Allah is Al-Ghaffar until maybe I just heard it right now in the Halaqa. But maybe perhaps for not only weeks or months, maybe for the past year, I have not even considered the name of Al-Ghaffar. And perhaps if I had spent time really embodying and internalizing the name Al-Ghaffar, I would find myself far more hopeful with Allah. and able to turn to Allah in a quicker fashion rather than be in a state of despair that Allah hates. There's something Allah hates, and that's why He attributes it to kufr, to rejection, is yas. La yay'asu min rawhillah illa al-qawmul kafirun. Those who have despair in Allah, in Allah's mercy and compassion, are those who reject Allah. Allah hates when people despair in Him, because that's indicative of what? Of people who don't know Allah. Everything about what Allah describes to us in the Quran is about His magnificent mercy, His magnificent compassion, His magnificent forgiveness. In Allah la yafrah, Allah is ecstatic when you turn back to Him seeking forgiveness. And so a nafs that has gone through the process to grow itself to where now it's beautified with all of Allah's majestic names, and you sit there and you study them and you read them and reflect on them and maybe memorize them. A nafs that has really spent time reflecting on the verses of the Quran and thinking of how I can live through these verses in my life. You know, how can I really hear the verse that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, in ja'akum fasiqun binaba'in fatabayyanu, that if someone comes to you with a piece of information, make sure you confirm and really process whether that information is true or not. That if we just take simple guidance like that, much of the affairs of our households and our communities will be greatly rectified. Instead of us running around with a bunch of rumors, half thoughts and half false fake news, right? And just a lot of false information and assumptions. And then we reach to conclusions about our loved ones and our community members and our broad community, and we judge one another. All of that is just, the impetus of that is having a bad idea, not really trying to live through the Quran, and then leads to a nafs that it inclines to away from Allah. But a nafs that reads the verse and then thinks about it, reflects on it, and then tries to realize it, is a nafs that's just being elevated. And so the more you become Quranic, the more you become prophetic, trying to embody all of those, you read the shama'il, you read the characteristics of the Prophet ﷺ, his mercy, his compassion, his loving nature, his tender nature, his desire to serve others, his selfless orientation, the time that he spent with people, guiding them and teaching them, and expressing so much love to them, that they felt, every companion, everyone around the Prophet felt that he loved them the most, because he was full of that ability to love. Those are the qualities of the Prophet ﷺ. Anas ibn Malik said he never hit anyone. I never saw him strike a woman, strike a servant, strike anyone. I never saw him speak in a way that was ugly or qabih. Never. Sallallahu ala habibina sallallahu alayhi wasallam. The more you embody those prophetic qualities, your nafs becomes not only radiya, pleasing, but then Allah is pleased with you. And then you are floating beyond the 7 heavens when Allah is pleased with you. That's why the dua is, Allahumma inna nas'aluka ridaka wal jannah. Oh Allah, we ask for your rida. That's what we want, Ya Allah. In this dunya, all I want, I don't care if I don't get anything from this dunya, but if I out of this dunya get rida Allah, that Allah is content with me, Allah is pleased with me, that's all I need. No wealth can compare, no spouse can compare, no children can compare, no health can compare. It's okay to pursue those things. It's a part of the dunya, it's fine. But I'm telling you, at the deepest, most spiritual level, nothing can compare to Allah being pleased with you. May Allah grant us that. And then some scholars have identified even higher nufus. Al-nafsul mulhama, the nafs that is inspired. فَأَلْهَمَهَا, Allah says, the nafs that is inspired by Allah. That Allah literally inspires you, speaks to you, inspires your heart and your soul to incline beautifully towards Him. So not only now Allah is pleased with you, but now He wants to inspire you because of how much you've turned to Him. Right? And that goes back to the verse that started this whole story from the khutbah until now. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. Allah will not change the condition of a people until they change themselves. And this whole process of changing yourself is all about this. It is getting your ideas right, getting your thoughts right, and then getting your practices in order, getting your diet in order, knowing how to cleanse the heart of all of its ailments and beautifying heart with all of the Quranic and prophetic qualities. Brothers and sisters, inshallah, now we'll watch the video. But I want you, as you're watching the video, to reflect on the change that we're seeking. I want you to reflect, number one, on the thoughts and the ideas that we need to get our mind around. And I want you to reflect around the akhlaq, the character, the behavior, the internal state of the qalb and the ruh and the nafs that we're trying to beautify to realize change. And in that context, I want you to watch this video. And then after that, inshallah, I'm going to want to hear your reflections about how change can happen in line with what we see in this beautiful video. Are we ready?
My son, my nephew, I forgive you on behalf of Salahuddin and his mother. My dear nephew, Shaykh, I don't blame you for the crime you commit. I'm not angry at you for being hurt or hurting my son. I'm angry at the devil. I blame the devil who misguiding you and misleading you to do such a horrible crime. I really feel sorry for your parents. They raised you and they want you to be successful. Your success is their success. Your happiness is your happiness, their happiness. Now they have to cry because of your crime that's committed. Forgiveness is the greatest gift or charity in Islam. I have to pour myself out to forgive someone that have wronged our family.
So, may Allah bless our dear Imam. He's an Imam, by the way, I think in Kentucky, and he's also the principal of a school. And in the longer version, that inshallah, maybe if you go and you watch, he says a lot more in his speech towards the young man who is complicit in the murder of his own son. You know, this Imam, his son was murdered. Salahuddin was murdered by a group of individuals, and he was one of the people who was complicit in the murder of his son. And one of the things that he says, just to kind of fill the picture, and there's already a lot just in those words that he mentioned that I hope you can reflect on. But one of the things that he says is, he says, I wish you were one of my students, and I wish I was your principal, because if you were one of my students, the worst thing that you would have done is chew gum in the hallway of my school, right? And I wish that I had the time that I could have spent with you to help you and to guide you and to teach you and to show you that there's a different way. And that there is a potential that the bar of vice or evil that you do is the extent of just simply chewing gum in the hallway. Right? That's something very beautiful and profound to reflect on. And that's what I want us to consider. What's settled in this man's heart, in this Imam's heart, that has enabled him to espouse these profound virtues and values intellectually as well as spiritually, qalbiyan, in his heart, that could produce a man who is full of forgiveness. Not only full of forgiveness, but he's full of compassion for this young man. He feels bad for him. He feels bad for his parents. He feels bad that this ever needed to happen in the first place. Whatever circumstances there were. You know, this is a young man. Who knows of the socio-economic, social circumstances he was in that may have helped to facilitate the murder of the Imam's son. But I want you I really want to open up the floor for you to share with the audience, with everyone, what do we take away in terms of change, real change that needs to happen in the mind, in the space of the mind, in the space of the heart, for us to begin to really see beauty in that fashion. You know, one of the things that I did was I read the comments on this video has gone viral. I mean, millions and millions and millions of people have watched this video. The amount of comments that I read that can't imagine that there are people like this in the world who have so much love and mercy and compassion and forgiveness and beautiful spiritedness. And it's all by non-Muslims who are observing this man, this Imam, and just feeling overwhelmed by who he is in the simple words, and feeling so motivated by him to be better people. And subhanAllah, all of that. And his accent is thick. He does not, you know, he doesn't speak with a clear kind of, you know, it's counter. My point is that it counteracts everyone, what we all think about why people may accept or reject you. You know, because you look a certain way and you speak a certain way, I'll reject you. Well, he's wearing a kufi. He has a beard. He's speaking with an accent. But the whole world is enamored by him. Subhanallah. Wallahi, subhanallah. Think about that. This is telling you something about spirituality. When spirituality is real, when spirituality is rooted in the qalb, rooted in the heart, people cannot deny that. When you are overwhelmingly beautiful, people can't deny that. You know, that's the secret of the Prophet ﷺ, by the way. You know, people say everything about the Prophet's growth and expansion and ability to impact people in terms of just simple, basic logic of how things can actually grow and change. Every single thing was against the Prophet ﷺ. Internally, in his own family, his qabila, his tribe, his nation, his people, external forces, the Romans, the Persians, the world at large. Everyone was disinterested in the Prophet ﷺ having any type of growth or capacity. And what the Prophet did in the most prophetic way was he infused his qalb with the nur of Allah Jalla wa Ala in a way that it was so vibrant and bright, you could not turn away from it. The Prophet's success was not predicated on his ability to wield a sword, okay? This kalam fadi, you know? As Azhar Usman says, that the only thing that's spread with a sword is my cream cheese on my bagel, right? Islam was not spread with a sword. Islam was spread through a qalb, a heart of the Prophet ﷺ, infused with the light of Allah Jalla wa Ala, that then became infused in the qulub, in the hearts of the people around him, men and women, that then became the truly shining bright stars of this dunya. And they touched civilizations and peoples across the world. Undeniably. This man, with his accent, with his thick accent, and I'm not you know, being derogatory or belittling, abadan. This man, I will kiss his feet. Wallahi, if I were to see him, I'd kiss his feet out of adab for his beautiful beard and his beautiful spirit. With his accent, with his beard, and with his kufi, he touched the lives of millions of people because he internalized what? Prophetic values, right? His spirit was one that was exuding prophecy. And that's change. If you want to talk about change, that's change. And so inshallah, I want to leave the floor open to hear your reflections about what he said and what he shared. And there's a lot of gems in that. I just shared one part, but there's a lot more to be said. So inshallah, I'm gonna leave it up to you, to the audience. to raise their hands and jump in. Who would like to share some thoughts about what they saw? Who wants to be called on and just be embarrassed? No one? No one's inspired? Yes, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. So I noticed two things. One was he was so, he accepted Allah's decree, so he didn't have that in his heart, like, why did this happen? Like, he was so pleased that he just let it all go, and he's like, there's no point in, keeping that grudge. This is what Allah wanted for me. It is what's best for me. And the second thing was what you talked about. It seems as if Allah is pleased with his soul, because when Allah is pleased with you, Allah puts love in the hearts of people around you, and look at how much admiration he's getting. So those are the two things that, stuck out for me.
Sadaqti, barakallahu fiki. Yes, إِذَا أَحَبَّ اللَّهُ عَبْدًا نَهَجَ جِبْرِيلِ. If Allah loves a servant, he calls upon the archangel Jibreel and he says, إِنِّي أُحِبُّ فُلَانَ فَأَحِبَّهُ. I love so-and-so, so love him or love her. And then the angel Jibreel calls out to the dwellers of the skies and he says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُحِبُّ فُلَانًا فَأَحِبُّوهُ. Allah loves so-and-so, so love him or love her. Imagine that. When Allah loves you, what happens? The Jibreel loves you. And then he calls to the thousands and thousands of angels who are in the celestial realm, and they begin to sing your praises. And then Allah, the Prophet ﷺ says, ثُمَّ يُوضَعْ لَهُ الْقَبُولُ فِي الْأَرْضِ. Then acceptance for that person is placed on earth. Right? You see how the change, the process of change happens? إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرْ حَتَّى تُغَيِّرُوا. That's how you should just think about it. Allah will not change until I change. Right? And that's the whole point of the khutbah, by the way, this was far more spiritual. The khutbah was far more theological, right? Was that it was affirming the idea that it's all about Allah. It's all about the decree of Allah. Everything is from Allah. Everything comes from Allah. And when your heart and your mind are situated around that clear idea that everything is from Allah, then you are free, spirited in a way that you can give. See, he wasn't sitting there dwelling and sulking in his sadness and rejecting the fact that his son is dead. No. He was so spiritually free that he was giving so much. It's on the backbone of him surrendering to the decree of Allah, because when he embraced Allah's decree, he could give. He can give a lot. And that's something that we struggle with as a society today. So in this very rampantly individualistic society, people are not able to give to anyone anything except probably pain very often. We don't see each other. We ignore one another. We disregard one another. We can be very aggressive with one another. And I'm talking about society at large. You watch all these social experiments, how someone, I just saw this social experiment where a child is being bullied in the middle of a restaurant, and no one is getting up to do anything. It's a young 14-year-old kid who's being bullied, and everyone's just sitting there watching and eating their food. And you can see them a little bit unnerved, but they just sit there. What's blocking me from giving and being and putting myself forward to help and to serve in a prophetic way? That's something that's missing from the qalb. Something that I think, wallahu alam, nahsabuhu kadhalik, we have a good opinion of our dear brother that he has that missing link, right? It's a beautiful prophetic spirit. May Allah bless us all with it. Allahumma ameen ya rabbil alameen. What else can we take away from this video? Yes, mashallah. Yusufi. Let's get you the mic. You have the mic, sister?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Every time he said my nephew, I was struck by that.
Why?
Because at first he meant it. You could tell he meant it. And then it's like, the person that wronged him, he's encompassing him as part of his family. I just thought that was so beautifully prophetic.
You know, that's a beautiful reflection. If you think about the language of the prophets in the Quran, when they speak about their people, what do they say? Ya qawmi, huh? My people. And when the people went so far away from Allah Jalla wa Ala and they were transgressing even against the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, what was the dua that the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam made to Allah about his people? Who knows it? Huh? Allahumma hdi, Allahumma ghfir liqawmi fa innahum la ya'lamun. You know, oh Allah, forgive and guide my people because they do not know. That's the spirit that I think this Imam had. My nephew, you don't know. I feel bad for you. I want you to be guided. Right? That's prophetic. That's prophetic. That's someone who has the belief of my qawm. How many of us, when we deal and interact with our broader society, with our community here in the masjid or in the Muslim community or the broader society, how many of us feel that we're dealing with our qawm, our people? Brothers and sisters, you live here in Roxbury, you live in Malden, you live in Cambridge, you live in Sharon, you live wherever you live. Wherever you are, that is your qawm. And when you walk out, you're in the bus, you're on the train, you're at work, you're at school, no matter what you see, whether it's good or bad, those are your people. Everything you see around you, my qawm. This Imam, if we embodied that spirit of my nephew, mashallah, may Allah bless Yusuf for this beautiful reflection, my nephew, my brother, my sister, my uncle, my father, my mother, our sympathy and our mercy for one another would look very different. Would look very different. Barakallahu feek. Jazakallah khair for that. What else do we have? There's a lot more. You want me to show you the video again so you can remember? Oh, this brother has a reflection. Okay.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
Jazakumullah khair. I think the power of forgiveness, it transcends every form of piety. It gels people together. It brings you closer to Allah. And this Imam reflected that power. He has it within him. If we have that, I think we'll be better communities.
SubhanAllah. The brother is reflecting on the power of forgiveness and how that in terms of piety and social well-being and wellness, if we all embodied a real spirit of forgiveness, then we will see a much more harmonious space in our communities. I'm going to get to you, brother, right now. There's a hadith that illustrates what our brother just said. Who can tell me this hadith? Who can tell me this hadith? Huh? What was that? He spoke about how this brother embodied a spirit of forgiveness and that he was able to forgive, and that if we can engender within our communities forgiveness, right, a specific spirit of forgiveness, then we will see greater well-being when we all carry within ourselves a forgiving spirit. What is a hadith that captures this meaning? الراحمون يرحمهم الرحمن يرحم من في الأرض يرحمكم من في السماء. The Prophet ﷺ says, الراحمون, those who have mercy with one another, يرحمهم الرحمن, the most merciful will have mercy upon them. So then the Prophet commands, have mercy upon the dwellers of this earth, and Allah Jalla wa Ala will have mercy upon you. See, when I embody mercy, I embody for forgiveness, and I'm able to forgive others and forget the pains that I may have experienced from others. Forgive. I have to pursuing justice and getting my rights and fulfilling them in a court of law or through proper means. That's an acceptable pursuit. Don't get me wrong. But being able to have a forgiving spirit. See, this man, it's not as if like he's going to face jail time. But the spirit of the Imam is what? I forgive you, my nephew, I forgive you, I love you, I care about you, and I want to give you a hug. And by the way, he's the one who says, I want to give you a hug. This short clip doesn't do justice to the whole thing, but there's a point where he says, if the judge will let me, I want to give you a hug. Right? and then they were able to eventually give a hug. And then, by the way, the continuation is the whole both families come together, and it's a big hug between the two families. And the mother jumps into the hug, and I guess an uncle, and then he and two people from his side are in the hug, and they're all crying together. الراحمون يرحمهم الرحمن. That's just the embodiment, tajseedun lirrahma. It's an embodiment of mercy and forgiveness coming out as a spirit that can be palpable and touched. May Allah bless us with those spirits in ourselves and in our homes. Ya Rabbil Alameen. Any final thoughts or reflections? We had a brother or sister. Let's get a sister, and then we'll go back to any sisters. Reflections or thoughts on this? Nothing? Nothing? Right. Let's go to this dear brother in the back. Alaikum salam. The name of the video, I'm not sure, but it's Imam forgives person who I don't remember the exact title. طيب, Omar Khushafa right here. See this guy right here, our MC? He's going to get you the name of the video. He'll take care of it. He has access to that stuff. Inshallah. طيب, we want to, any questions or thoughts on the whole halaqa? We can move on from the video. Any questions that you have, you can also text them in. If you have any questions, I can take some questions before we close. Yes, brother.
Assalamu alaikum. Yes, my question is more critical of the forgiveness. Doesn't the person have to deserve the forgiveness?
What do you mean by that?
Like somebody, like if you forgive somebody, what if they do not deserve the forgiveness? Like, do they not have to earn the forgiveness?
See, it depends on what you're talking about. I just said, in terms of forgiveness, meaning that this person should not be punished, for example, or shouldn't be held accountable. No, that's something that is beyond my capacity. Let's say someone has done a crime against me, right? There are times when that crime can be forgiven, right? I can accept. I can say, forget. I don't want retribution. I don't want, for example, whatever. But sometimes there are crimes that are not. That cannot be removed even by your forgiveness. So the judge, whether it's in Sharia or in any system, they'll say, no, this is a punishable crime that cannot be quote unquote forgiven, so there has to be a certain type of punishment. But the difference is for me to embody a spirit of forgiveness, and to not carry in my heart the disease of anger, and the disease of hatred, and the disease of being bothered and not knowing how to move on, that's a problem. That becomes a problem. So I may not, the person who may have wronged, there may need to be retribution, the fulfillment of justice, right? That doesn't just go unnoticed. Perhaps there are vices or wrongs that really have to be rectified, and people have to be held accountable. But my nafs is ghani, it's wealthy, it's rich, it's above kind of being in the tit for tat, needing to have something that I'll never get over. For example, there are people who spend time never getting over the transgressions that were done towards them. So no, I can rid my heart and I can liberate my heart from being imprisoned by needing a certain type of retribution. So there's a difference between the forgiveness that you can embody in your soul towards a circumstance, and then there is the justice that has to be fulfilled in that circumstance that may be beyond your capacity to even forgive. Wallahu a'lam. Tayyib, let me look at some of these questions. What advice do you have for someone who feels spiritually locked? They are close to the deen but seem like they are stuck in the same place. How do you do a spiritual intentional reset when you feel your heart is dull? This is a very beautiful question. And this is really the essence of what I hope to excite in your minds and your hearts by going through the nufus and talking a little bit about how that transition happened. And like I said, in terms of the body, and I hope that that was a good, metaphor for spiritual change. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it very simple. There are things that He asks us to do. He asks us to pray. So we have to physically, even if I don't want to pray, for me to break out of that spiritual dullness or that spiritual state of deadness, if you will, I have to force my body to pray. As the Prophet ﷺ says, if you don't cry, fatabaka. If you don't cry, then force yourself to cry. Literally, make yourself cry. Because you have to sometimes will your body into a state, even if you don't want to do it. Very often when you're doing physical therapy, you don't want to do physical therapy, but you have to will yourself because you know that the net result is going to be something beneficial. So the same thing in the spiritual realm. Will my body to pray 5 times a day. No matter what happens, I'm going to break my streak of missing Fajr on time and I'm going to pray it on time. If I can get my 5 salawat in order and on time, I have taken a serious step towards breaking that spiritual dullness. And then if I can add to that, adhkar, remembrance. Imam al-Ghazali, when he talks about remembrance, he speaks specifically about this to people who say, I make dhikr but I don't feel it. Like I will say, La ilaha illallah, Muhammadun Rasulullah, I'll say Allahu Akbar walhamdulillah, and I'll make these adhkar but I don't feel it. Imam al-Ghazali says, don't ever think that when the tongue is in motion, it is not imprinting something on the heart. Whenever the tongue is in motion, something is being imprinted on the heart. If what's on the tongue is good, then something good is being imprinted. When on the tongue is ugly, qabih, bad, that is being imprinted on your heart. And so you have to be mindful that your tongue, your heart, is this empty vessel. And you choose what to bring into it from meanings, from understandings, from spirituality, from guidance. So when you're doing dhikr, let's say your heart is completely sealed off because you've just really transgressed against Allah. So Allah may have put a seal on your heart, or you feel that your heart is dead. When you start to make dhikr, it starts like a chisel, just slowly chipping away, chipping away, chipping away. And sometimes it may take, a few weeks to remove the seal. Sometimes it may take a few months, depending on how thick it is. Sometimes it may take a year. But if you keep at it with repetition, it will break. And then you will feel it. And this is why they say, Man dhaqa araf. Those who've tasted the halawa of iman, the sweetness of iman, they know what true sweetness tastes like. Because they spent the time. You see people who say, oh, I love running. Mashallah, I get such a high off of running. Running is so refreshing. If I don't run, I don't feel like I've. And some of us are like, what are you talking about? Running? That doesn't sound like something I'm really interested or excited about doing. And some of us, we have that same exact feeling when talking about spirituality. What do you mean you felt so spiritually uplifted when you prayed Isha? I was annoyed that I had to pray Isha because I was hoping to, finish my movie. And the Isha was just the Shaykh was so long. Oh my God, can you just cut it down a little bit? Right? That's how some of us feel. I'm not trying to, I'm just trying to describe how many of us feel. But those feelings, they're not so hard to understand or make sense of. If I'm someone who's never run and I've never conditioned my body to run, then of course running will always be an abusive thing. I'll just see it and I'll say, just watching it makes me look, gets me tired and achy. But if I'm someone who's conditioning their body, then it becomes beautiful. That's why for the Prophet it was very simple. Arihna biha ya Bilal. Bring relief to us through it, ya Bilal. Because it was the Prophet from the first moment of revelation in Ghar Hira, and then 23 years of receiving revelation, the Quran, living through it, reciting it in the night. He would sit there and some nights just one verse would overtake him. When Bilal came to him one morning to wake him up, And the Prophet ﷺ was drenched in tears. And he says, مَا يُبْكِيكَ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ, why are you crying this way, Ya Rasulullah? He says, كَيْفَ لَا أَبْكِي, how should I not cry? وَأُنزِلَ عَلَيَّ اللَّيْلَ إِنَّ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَاخْتِلَافِ اللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ لَآيَاتٍ لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ الَّذِينَ يَذْكُرُونَ اللَّهَ قِيَامًا وَقُعُودًا وَعَلَى جُنُوبِهِمْ وَيَتَفَكَّرُونَ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ رَبَّنَا مَا خَلَقْتَ هَذَا بَاطِلًا سُبْحَانَكَ فَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. He says, how can I not cry tonight when I have just received this verse that verily in the creations of the heavens and the earth and the alternations of the night and the day are signs for those who have hearts, those who remember Allah standing and sitting and on their sides, and they think and they reflect in the creation of Allah, and they say, verily, Ya Allah, you have not created this for naught, haphazardly. You haven't created this in an empty way, in an empty fashion. Subhanak, glorified be you. فَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ, save us from the pains of the afterlife in Jahannam. He spent one night on this verse, just absorbed in it. Try this as a test, as a homework. Go home tonight, tomorrow night, tomorrow morning. Take one verse from the Quran, any verse, and just really think about it. Ask all of the questions. You know, someone was asking me, Shaykh, how do I do tafakkur? How do I do tadabbur? You know, we always hear this ibadah of thinking and reflecting. I really don't know how to do it. How do I do it? It's a good question, right? How do you do tafakkur and tadabbur? Let me make it very simple for you. Give me something that's important to you in your life. Anything that's the object of your concern. Marriage, your wife, your kids, your husband, your money, your job, a boss at work who's annoying. Anything. There's something that is your concern. You know, a problem that you're trying to solve. You're trying to figure out how you're going to get out of this debt that you're in, and how can you pay off next month? Something, when it becomes the object of your concern, what happens? You start to think about it. But you don't just think about it mindlessly. No, you start asking questions. How can I fix this? Who can I talk to help me fix this problem? Who can I have shura with that can really give me some good insight to get out of this problem? Should I go speak to this person and that expert and maybe a mental health professional and the Shaykh, and then speak to the executive director, and then maybe they can, really help me think through what I can do? And then you think about it, and then you maybe do some research online. You start to read up on your problem, and you reflect on it, and you stay up at night thinking about it. That's all what? It's all tafakkur. That's all thinking. Imagine if you take that away and you put Allah, and you put a verse from the ayat of Allah, and you apply all of those thought processes and all those questions, and you just apply it to Allah or to the Quran, the words of Allah. Then you begin to do tafakkur. It's about asking questions. What does Allah mean here? And why is He saying this? And in what context? And what do these words mean? And what's coming before? And what's coming after? Well, what is this whole surah talking about? So you'll start to research. Oh, this surah is talking about this. Oh, interesting. And then what's the succession of ayat? And how come Allah used this word here and not use that word there? That's all tafakkur, just asking questions. Suddenly the Quran comes to life. But if I read it and just go, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah, this Quran just, I can't really, it doesn't do anything for me. If I'm mumbling it, it's not going to do anything. If I'm just speeding through it, that's why for Sayyidina Umar, we spoke about him in the khutbah. His whole transformation from being someone who was subhuman before his Islam. I said in the khutbah that Umar was the protege of Abu Jahl. And Umar was being fashioned to basically become the next Abu Jahl. And he was the strong man of Abu Jahl. That's all Umar was. He was a brute. Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anh, before Islam. But with Islam, the transformation from being a brute who people were terrified of, men, women would literally, a woman had a miscarriage by just Umar yelling at her. Wallahi. That's how terrified people were of him, because he was a bully. And then Islam enters into his heart. When's the first time he experienced the beauty of Islam touching his heart? When he heard his daughter reciting Quran. Subhanallah. right? And just the words of the Quran, they moved him, moved his heart. So he's like, I need to explore this further. Take me to the Prophet. And of course, Hamza was sitting there just, let him in right? Go ahead. Go see the Prophet. And of course, everyone was worried that Umar wants to see, because Umar was one of the people who was, being sanctioned to kill the Prophet ﷺ. But it was the Quran touching his heart. And then that love affair started between him and the Quran, and reading and reciting. And that's the adab of the companions, was to read a few verses, study them, think about them, reflect on them, act upon them. Don't ever forget the importance and the significance of act. الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا, those who believe and do, because this is always neglected. Act and do. So they did that. Believed, read, reflected, acted upon. And then slowly Umar radiallahu anhu became from Abu Jahl like to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam like. And as some narrations say, that if there were to be a prophet, some narrations say this, after Muhammad, it would be Umar, because of who he became. He is the companion that had such an intimate relationship with the Quran that ultimately he was able to call and assess and feel that a verse should come down. I have an entire book called Al-Muwafaqat Al-Umariyah. The times when Umar's opinion about revelation needing to come down and revelation actually coming down in that moment, he has the most instances of that happening amongst the companions. When he felt, it's time that khamr, that alcohol is fully prohibited, immediately the verse was revealed. Umar felt it was time. That's how Quranic in orientation he became. You think he became that overnight? You think he became that just because, he was a good-looking tall guy? No. He became that because he put in the work. He did it every day in a regimented, spirited fashion. So he became Quranic, and then he became prophetic. So he was then uplifted to be the leader after Sayyidina Abu Bakr. And he became known for his justice and his mercy because he did the work. He broke out of those spiritual states, that subhuman state, to them entering into angelic spaces and prophetic spaces. May Allah help us to make those transformations. What advice do you give to someone who struggle to change if you feel that you are not good enough? Brothers and sisters, never, ever, ever in the sight of Allah, when you're dealing with Allah, never think that you're not good enough. Every single being on earth is more than good enough to have a relationship with Allah. Allah, everything about how Allah describes Himself and speaks about Himself in the Quran, and the guidance that we get from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, all of it is to illustrate Allah saying, I am close, I am here, I am near, I will forgive, come back to me. I love that you come back to me. No matter how bad you think you are, come back to me. Don't ever despair. I am full of loving mercy. I want to forgive you. Just walk towards me. That's everything about the Quran, everything about the Sunnah illustrates that. Very often the reason why we feel we're not good enough is because we don't understand what Allah is actually about. You want a beautiful exercise to do? Get any small book that speaks about the names of Allah, 99 names of Allah. Even go online, what are the 99 names? And just a simple description, one line. There are booklets you can find anywhere that just 99 names, and each one has just like one sentence. Take those 99 names and read them and think about those names. Process them. Think about how majestic they are and how profound they are. You do that, and you will find that everything about Allah is beautiful and majestic. You will find yourself infused with divine beauty. And this is also something deeper into this conception of change, is that when you connect yourself to Allah, and you orient yourself around Allah, and you beautify yourself through and by Allah, then you will become beautiful to others. That's why تَخَلَّقُوا بِأَخْلَاقِ اللَّهِ, embody the characters of Allah Jalla wa Ala. That's how you become beautiful. And so don't ever think that you are not good enough. Everything about our guidance from Allah Jalla wa Ala says that you are more than good enough. The potential in this room, in every single one of our hearts and souls, no matter how far we think we are from Allah, or how much we think we've turned. Someone's sitting here saying, but this guy doesn't know what I do. This sheikh maybe is talking about like cursing or like looking at something bad. No, but he doesn't know how bad I've been. I promise you, no one in this room is as bad as they think they are. And I guarantee you that you're much better than you even think you. I know for a fact that you're much better, and your potential for goodness is there. And I promise you, and this is not me just kind of having conjecture, I have yaqeen billah jalla wa ala, that if we turn to Him, He turns to us. All we have to do is say, Ya Allah. That's all we have to do. Turn our hearts towards Him. Allah, inni qareeb, inni qareeb, inni qareeb, inni qareeb. Why does Allah keep on asserting, I am close? Don't ever think you're far from Allah. Don't ever think Allah is far. Just turn to Him and He is there. You will see Him there, and He's always there. And Allah is never not there. It's only when we push Allah away and we force Him away and we say, Allah, get away, I don't want, and I run another way. But even with that, if you just turn, Allah's there. May Allah help us to realize Allah's closeness to us. Tayyib, inshallah, I think we will, let me answer this last question and we'll close with that. What can sisters do in that time of the month to feel closer to Allah, since we don't have salah? Brothers and sisters, especially sisters, in that time of the month, yes, you may not be able to pray, but you can do so many other things. Dhikr, the remembrance of Allah. The Prophet ﷺ says, لا يزال العبد لا يزال اللسان رطبا بذكر الله, that the tongue should always be moist in the remembrance of Allah. This tongue that Allah has gifted us, this heart that Allah has gifted us, can always breathe in the praise of Allah Jalla wa Ala. That doesn't require time, space, place. No. That's timeless. You can do it all the time. Be in the remembrance of Allah. When you're walking into the bathroom, there's a dua. You know, if we just think about this, we have all of these dua that we learn maybe growing up, or we see in these little books, or as a new Muslim you may have seen them in books. Dua for entering the bathroom, dua for leaving the bathroom, dua for entering the home, dua for leaving the home, dua for entering onto your beast of burden or your car, dua for travel, dua for putting on new clothes, dua for buying something new, dua for going to sleep, dua for waking up from sleep, dua, 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 dua. What do you think that is? What do you think all of these ad'iyah are? Did you ever take some time to think about that? What do you think it is? It's dhikr. It's praise of Allah. It's remembering Allah. It's being with Allah. All of those ad'iyah are so beautiful, so rich in meaning, that if we just use them, we utilize those ad'iyah that have been prescribed for us by the Prophet ﷺ, we will find ourselves profoundly spiritually enriched. But all of us, we look at these, we have a lot of the ad'iyah posted around the masjid. We just look at them, oh, maybe that's for the kids, when they're doing school. Teach them, okay, you put your shoes on, you say this. I was talking to someone the other day, and I was telling them this point. I was saying how, when's the last time you made the dua for eating food, but you really made that dua? They said, Wallahi, I have no idea when's the last time I even thought of that dua, let alone made it. Well, if that's my reality, I'm so disconnected from this guidance, then I have to understand that I am the one who's faulty. I am the one who's falling short. Allahumma barik lana fima razaqtana wa qina adhab an-nar. Allahumma barik lana. Oh Allah, bless for us. Allahumma barik lana ma razaqtana. What you have given us as sustenance, as rizq. And please save us from the pains of the afterlife. You're asking Allah for barakah. The dua for rukub, getting onto your car, is a beautiful dua. All infused with profound meanings around Allah and the afterlife and returning to Allah. Make dua. Make dua, make dhikr, listen to the Quran. One of the Prophet ﷺ, one of the beautiful ibadat he would do is listen to the Quran. Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, come, recite the book of Allah for me. I want to hear your beautiful voice. I want to hear the Quran. How often do we listen to the Quran? Turn the Quran on in your home. Just turn it on all the time. Let your children, let yourself hear the Quran. Everything, the dua, the dhikr, the Quran, the prayer, all of it is just telling you what? It's just chanting one thing. Allah, 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 Allah. And all of these are ways to remember Allah. All of these are means to remember Allah. May Allah bless us and help us to use them, to remember Him and to be in the praise of Him, inshallah. In closing, we're going to do collectively one thing. All of you can quietly in your hearts just close your eyes, and we're going to do Istighfar together. We're going to turn to Allah in a state of Istighfar, seeking Allah's forgiveness, because the change that we're seeking, unlocking the secrets of change, require that we begin to cleanse our internal states and then beautify them with the light of Allah. And so let us begin together tonight to do an istighfar, a supplication of forgiveness, with the intention, with the hope that Allah Jalla wa Ala will cleanse and help us to cleanse ourselves so we can beautify ourselves with the best of prophetic and Quranic values. So inshallah, all of you close your eyes. I will say out loud and you can say under your breath and quietly to yourself. We will do istighfar, and whenever I stop, that's when we'll stop, inshallah. Barakallahu feekum. أستغفر الله 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 العظيم الذي لا إله إلا هو أستغفر الله العظيم. We ask Allah to accept from us this gathering, to accept our istighfar, to bless us and to increase us and to guide us, to make beloved to our hearts the remembrance of Allah, the istighfar, the salawat, the tahleel and the takbir and the tahmeed. May Allah always make our tongues moistened in the remembrance of Allah. Allahumma ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillah.